Today we're covering 8th grade, Chapter 1, Lesson 4, Scientific Notation. We're going to complete the table below to discover what happens when a decimal is multiplied by a power of 10. So in the first example, it says 4.7 times 10 to the power of 1, which means 4.7 times 10. And if we multiplied 4.7 times 10, if there ends in a 0, I just put a 0 down and then multiply by the 1. It's got one decimal space in the problem, so I need to move it one space over. That's how they got 47. For the next one, it says 4.7 times 10 to the second, which would be 4.7 times 100. So we would multiply 4.7 times 100. That would mean I'd put two zeros down in the 7 and the 4. And it's got one decimal space in the problem, so I need one in my answer, one space over. So that would be 470. The next one is 4.7 times 10 to the third power, so that'd be 4.7 times 1,000. I hope you're starting to see kind of a pattern here. I'm going to put 3 zeros down because there's 3 at the end, and then the 47. And there's one decimal space in the problem, so I move it over once. And my answer is 4,700. So each time I multiplied it by a power of 10, the more zeros, the more times I moved the number 47 over. So look, it had, I moved the decimal over one space here. I moved the decimal 2 spaces over, and there were 2, the exponent of 2. I moved the decimal 3 spaces, and there was an exponent of 3. So the exponent tells us how many times to move the decimal. The exponent tells us how many times to move the decimal. Now, those negative exponents, if a positive exponent, we moved it to the right, look what happened from here and here. Which way did I move the decimal? It was between the 4 and the 7. Now it's in front of the 4. So the exponent still tells us how many spaces to move the decimal. If it's negative, we move it to the left. So I have 2. I'm going to move it to the left 2 spaces, so it would be 0.047. An exponent of 3 would be 4.7 times 1/1000th. So I'm going to move it 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3. That means I need 2 zeros in front. So again, the exponent tells us how many times to move the decimal. The decimal moves to the right if it, and by it I mean the exponent, and to the left if it's negative. And again, we were talking about the exponent. If the exponent is positive, it moves to the right. If it's negative, it moves to the left. Scientific notation is writing a number as the product of a factor and a power of 10. Scientific notation is writing a number as the product means to multiply, of a factor and a power of 10. Writing a number as the product of a factor and a power of 10. And this comes in handy typically in science when we're dealing with really large numbers or really small numbers. Let's try some examples. We're going to express each number in standard notation. So remember, if it's positive, we move it to the right. So I'm going to move the decimal 4 spaces. 1, 2, and then I'm going to need 2 more zeros. So 5, 3, 4, 0, 0. On this one, it's negative, so we're moving it 3 spaces to the left, which means I'm going to need 2 zeros in front of it. Okay, now let's try starting with a number and writing it in scientific notation. When we write numbers in scientific notation, there's only 1 digit in front of the decimal. So I'm going to write it underneath. 3, decimal, 7, 2, 5. I'm not going to write the rest of the zeros, just the main part, the significant digits. So if I move the decimal to between the 3 and the 7, I had to move it 6 spaces. So it's times 10 to the 6th power. Okay, on this one, I'm going to move the decimal between the 3 and the 1. The decimal needs to go behind the first number, so on this one, I'm moving it to the right. So I want people who work this problem to be moving it to the left. Since it's a decimal number, that makes it a negative. So how many spaces did I move it? 4. So that's negative 4. If the number is less than 1, it will be a negative exponent. If it is greater than 1, it will be a positive exponent. So this number here was definitely greater than 1. That's why it got the positive exponent. This number was less than 1, much smaller than 1, and so it got a negative exponent. Let's look at the independent practice that you are supposed to do. On the first 2, you're just writing it in standard notation, so you're going to move the decimal. So for this first one, it's positive, you're going to move it to the right, and the next one is negative, so you're going to move it to the left. On the next ones, you're writing it in scientific notation. So if it's a number bigger than 1, it's going to be a positive exponent. If it's a number less than 1, you're going to make it a negative exponent. So let's look at number 6. I would move the decimal between the 9, so it would be 9.9 times 10. And how many spaces would I have to move it to get it there? 3. So make it a negative 3. Number 8. Which number is greater? 3.5 times 10 to the 4th power or 2.1 times 10 to the 6th power? Remember, the exponents tell you how many zeros they're going to get after the number. Think about it. Think about what that might mean. Number 9 says the table lists the populations of 5 countries. List the countries from least to greatest. So we want the littlest. And this kind of goes with 8. If they have a smaller exponent like that one right there, that means that they're going to be a smaller number. He's going to only have 5 spaces behind him. So that would be 4 more zeros. He's going to definitely be smaller because he's going to have less place values. So the one with the smallest place value will be the smallest number. And that's the one with the smallest exponent. Now, if they have the same exponents, like Egypt and Australia, then you can look at the first number. You look at the number in front to see which one is smaller. Number 10, in 2005, Hurricane Katrina caused over $125 billion in damages in the southern United States. Write $125 billion in scientific notation. Maybe first we need to write it in regular, so no, without the words. So 125 billion would be how many zeros? That would be million. So if we want to write it in scientific notation, it has to go, the decimal has to go behind the 1. And then we would need a positive exponent. What would I need to put here?